Good morning, and thank you all for being here today. I'm State Representative Jason Ortitai of the 46th District. Welcome to Heidelberg. It's a nice part of the 46th District, a new part of the district as well, and I'm happy to be here with my fellow colleagues and a few other distinguished members of the audience. Today, I'm here to talk about Governor Wolf's latest budget proposal, which spends well beyond our means and calls for higher taxes on every single working Pennsylvania and small business. Today, we are here on behalf of those taxpayers to say enough is enough. Last January, when I was sworn into office, I found myself very excited to get started, roll my sleeves up, and get to work. My goal was very simple: to create an environment that energized our slow economy and get people back to work. This was about jobs and creating jobs. As I was out knocking on doors, that was the #1 issue to people. While it may not be a well-known fact, after graduating Robert Morris University, I actually left the state of Pennsylvania to pursue a graduate degree and to try to find work outside of the state. It turns out I wasn't alone. Our young people in Pennsylvania are leaving at the tune of about 12,000 people per day. We should be alarmed by this. We need to be asking ourselves why our youth is leaving this state. It's quite simple, and the other day I was glad to see the governor agree. Our economy is broken. So how do we fix it? Definitely not by crushing middle-class families with taxes and small businesses with higher taxes. Unfortunately, the governor thinks that's the only way to go. Governor Wolf's budget would raise taxes on working Pennsylvanians and small businesses for no other purpose than to grow government and spend more money. And to make matters worse, his plan does nothing to address skyrocketing property taxes and the growing pension crisis. Governor Wolf's higher taxes not only hurt middle-class Pennsylvanians by asking them to give more out of every paycheck, his higher taxes also mean fewer businesses will move here, stay here, and hire local Pennsylvanians. Currently, Pennsylvania has the second highest corporate net income tax rate in the country, the second highest. If our goal is to see our economy boom, we need to make Pennsylvania a better place to do business, not make us less competitive on the national and international stage. I recently read an article that pointed out every time Pennsylvania adds a tax or raises a tax, it makes the governor of Florida really happy. Why? Because it means more businesses and more residents are going to move there instead of staying here. I, for one, am not okay with this. I'm not okay with our good-paying jobs leaving our borders. We should be fighting for our workforce, fighting for our taxpayers, and fighting for our jobs. The taxpayers I represent have been very clear. I hear it every day from them. They do not want to send more money to Harrisburg. Higher taxes will not solve our problems and make our economy grow. Instead of focusing on an unrealistic spending wish list and taxing everybody under the sun to get it, let's set our sights on growing our economy, adding jobs, making it easier for our young people and working families to stay here and get family-sustaining jobs. Thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce Speaker Mike Torzai.
Thanks, Jason. Thank you. Jason, thank you very much. And to David Steinberger, the owner of Steinberger Floors, Inc., it's so great of you to have us here today. We're honored as a group to be in your small business and the jobs that you're creating in this community. It's just outstanding. So thanks for having us today.
My pleasure.
And I know it's been family-owned and operated, since 1980?
Yes.
This business? And how many people do you employ, sir?
22.
22 folks. That's great. Well, thank you for having us, and we're looking forward to hearing what you have to tell folks about your business and what it's like to compete in Pennsylvania today. I wanted to make this point, folks. A couple of important notions. First of all, the folks behind me, members of the House Republican Caucus, we're members who are in touch with our communities all throughout Western Pennsylvania. We're friends and know exactly what small business persons like Dave Steinberger go through, making sure that he's meeting payroll, making sure that he's competing appropriately, making sure that he's contributing to the community. These are folks that are making the economy happen. You increase the personal income tax or the sales tax in what the governor originally wanted, a 20% increase in the personal income tax, a 10% increase in the sales tax. and an expansion of the sales tax to a wide variety of items. He wanted to grow spending in 2 years' time by $13 billion. $13 billion. Folks, what we did in the state legislature is we put not one, not two, but 3 responsible budgets on this governor's desk. We put the first budget on June, right on time, just as we did for the past 4 years when we took back the majority, right on time. And that budget spent 3.2% more than last year's budget. Now think about this. And the governor vetoed it in total. A responsible budget, increased education spending for K through 12. The rate of growth in the economy in the United States today for 2015 is less than 1%. The rate of inflation is less than 1%. I'm sorry, but what businesses are increasing their expenditures by 3.6%? Their expenditures by 3.6% in a down economy, and then we're going to go and tax them and take more money from them? The third budget we did was 3.6%. The first one was 3.2%. We put a compromised budget on the governor's desk. Now, he signed this last one right before the holidays, about a little less than 90%. But throughout the process, unfortunately, he's held those folks that received those dollars, he's held them hostage for no reason whatsoever. 70% of the agreed upon expenditures could have been signed into law right from the get-go. And I think the whole budget should have been signed into effect. Now, we passed a budget that did not increase taxes at 30.2. Governor, as I said, signed 87% of it. What we need to do from this point forward is to continue to protect small business owners and families all throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and we can close this 2015-2016 budget together by just coming to an agreement on what those last monies are. He vetoed again for hostage-taking purposes, unfortunately, basic education funding, payments to Medicaid, and payments to corrections. Now, I do have to say one thing about some of the costs. You have to understand this, because people don't get it. What has continued to increase, the mandated increases, quote unquote, are primarily driven by the costs and contributions to public sector pensions. In this 15-16 budget, the contributions to the PESers, the teachers' pensions alone, went from $1.3 billion to $1.725 billion on an annual basis. Keep in mind that is the result directly of some policy decisions that were made by another governor that never got a budget done on time, Governor Rendell, and who increased spending over 8 years' time by about 50% when the rate of inflation was about 20%, and who also deferred payments to the pension systems and put them on taxpayers today so that he could spend more. Fiscal responsibility has started in the legislature with 3 responsible budgets, and the governor should have signed the first budget and should have signed certainly the last budget in total, and we would not have any crisis here today. We've been out there protecting small business owners like this good gentleman here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next, I'm going to call on Mr. Steinberger. This is a great facility. I'm happy to have you here, happy to have you part of the 46th District. Love to hear your comments on this. I know we got to talk a little bit more about this earlier today, but happy to have you here and hand it off to you. Thank you very much.
Those are 2 hard things to follow. Small businesses are probably 65, if not greater, percentage of employment for the economy today, contribute to hiring people. We can't afford taxes to go up. We need tax incentives, we need tax breaks. I think we need less government. I think the government needs to get a control on themselves, to quit spending before you have the money. There's a lot of holes in the system. I think welfare is a big hole in the system that needs plugged. It would help the employment for all small businesses and large cap businesses. I think the smaller businesses need more tax breaks like the larger businesses, and the corporations get them. I mean, you got Facebook, instead of paying taxes, they're giving out $1 million worth of bonuses to their employees, which I think is great, but I think they should pay more taxes also to help levy our taxes. It's tough being a small businessman, like you heard before. There's payroll we have to meet. We have to pay our vendors. We have to pay personal taxes, profit sharing taxes, payroll taxes, unemployment taxes, workman's comp, your liability insurance, all your insurances. Checkbook doesn't last too long sometimes. Government kind of uses their checkbook, whether they have the money or not, and they'll figure out later where to get the money. I don't do that. I wouldn't be so fortunate being here 37 years, highly successful, if I didn't have my own checkbook to help myself grow. I think tax cuts are going to hurt the economy, or will help the economy. More people will spend money rather than paying some taxes. I just feel that we need help, all the small businesses. I actually feel the individuals themselves need help on the money they make. The percentage of the taxes are too high. Payroll taxes are high, unemployment taxes are high, real estate property taxes are high. Everybody's cost of doing business, everybody's personal cost, health care is a huge cost to the employers, to their employees. For both of us, it's a large cost. I just feel that we all need help, and I think the government should figure out a way to get us help without raising taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Next up, we have Sonny Bringall from Victorian Finance. He's just down the road in Bridgeville. You started your business in the early 2000s, and you've been steadily growing since then, and we all look forward to your comments about your small business. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David, for having us here as well. Very succinctly, the tax increases have two direct impacts on my company and my family of employees. We employ over 70 people in Western PA. These are your family, your friends, your neighbors. These are the people we employ in our company. Tax increases directly affect my ability to hire additional people. I told them, look to the left and right of you. I cannot hire as many people as every dollar that the government takes from me. I am putting that towards adding people to the company and help people in Western PA. We help people in Western PA buy houses. That is our purpose. And the tax increases prevent me from hiring any additional employees to do that. Secondly, we compete against other companies in other states that don't have these tax increases. I compete directly with them. The more taxes I have, the less competitive I am in the products I sell in other states. Those people providing those services we sell in other states work here in Bridgeville and in Murraysville. If I'm not able to be competitive in those other states, I cannot hire more people here, and that directly affects my ability to do that. So from all of Dave's points as well, there's so many other regulations that we get hit with in the last couple of years that have added to our expenses in doing that. And this is another one that makes us severely less competitive compared to other states and other places that we have to hire more people here and keep them in our state. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sonny. And we're going to go in order down the line here. So first I'll call up Representative George Dunbar.
Thank you. Thank you, Jason. I'm going to talk about structural deficit. Earlier this year in February, the governor gave us his lecture, which was supposed to be a budget address. And in that lecture, he stressed the importance of the structural deficit. He called it a ticking time bomb of $1.8 billion that was going to explode and cause catastrophic problems for Pennsylvania. The truth of the matter is, in the IFO reported just in our last appropriations here in the last 3 weeks, that our structural deficit was $4 billion in 2010. $4 billion. We're down to $1.8 billion now. So we've been dealing with the structural deficit for the last 4 budgets with no broad-based tax increases. The governor's using it as an excuse to have broad-based tax increases. So if this is a ticking time bomb, If this $1.8 billion is a ticking time bomb, it is a very long wick and it's burning very slow. He used the term simple math. Simple math. I need to increase taxes to cover the structural deficit. It's simple math. Now, I did not go to MIT. I, like Jason, went to Robert Morris College, and simple math to me at Robert Morris just tells me that in order to address a $1.8 billion structural deficit, you don't need to raise taxes by $4 billion and spending by a like amount. That's simple math to me. As we stand here in a business, there's a lot of different ways we can deal with the structural deficit. And the governor's taking the easy answer. He's taking the easiest way to deal with a structural deficit is let's just tax. Let's just tax these people. Let's just generate those revenues and tax. That's the easy answer. The real answer in how to deal with the structural deficit is to increase the economy, have economic growth, take care of businesses like this one here. Through economic growth, if 2% of economic growth generates an additional $600 million of revenue for us. So to me, it's very counterintuitive to raise taxes, which will stunt economic growth. So we are certainly going to try and take a different path. So thank you, and I will turn it over.
Thank you, George. Next, we'll move down to my neighbor, Representative John Moore. Thanks, John.
Yes. My 60,000 bosses live in Bethel Park, Peters Township, and Upper St. Clair. And the message from my bosses is loud and clear. They believe they pay enough in taxes. Governor Wolf ran on a campaign that he was going to put more money into education and reduce property taxes. What did he do? In December, he vetoed $3.1 billion of basic education funding. $3.1 billion. This puts the enacted budget for education back at the level it was in the 1980s. 1988-89 fiscal year was the last year basic education funding was as low from the state as it is now. And that is because Governor Wolf vetoed. We could have had the highest ever state spending on basic education. Instead, we're going to have the lowest in more than a quarter century. Now, what's the ripple effect? Well, the governor's hunger for taxes is apparently so profound that when he can't get taxes enacted through the legislature, he's going to compel school districts to raise taxes. Because this substantial reduction in basic education funding, some school districts will be able to weather the storm, others will not. And you can expect property tax increases, 20%, 30%, 40%, based upon Governor Wolf's policies. It's a shame. I don't understand what his agenda is really all about. When we passed the first two budgets, as Speaker Turzai referred to, more than 2/3 of those line items were exactly what the governor asked for, or sometimes even more. Yet he vetoed those. In this budget that he enacted in December, he did have line item vetoes. 50 lines that were exactly what he asked for, vetoed. It's very difficult for me to understand how I come to agreement with a man who cannot seem to agree with himself. But we try. We're looking for cooperation. The budget that was considered in December, one budget he called visionary, the other one he called stupid. The difference between visionary and stupid was 2%. 30.8 billion versus 30.2 billion, 2%. In his book, one is visionary, the other is stupid. In my experience in life, if you get 98% of what you're hoping for, you declare victory and you move on. I'm hoping that this governor will start to listen to my bosses and bosses of all the others who are around me here and get back to the cooperation table and listen, and let's solve this and move forward without further burdens on the backs of Pennsylvanians. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Thanks, John. Next up, I'd like to introduce Representative Eli Ivankovich.
Thank you, Jason. Well, I guess I drew the short straw of speaking after John Marr. There's so much that's already been said. I don't want to repeat anything, but I just want to make a few comments, a few about the tax structure in Pennsylvania and just a few about the expenditure side. The public needs to understand, and it needs to be clear to the public how our tax structure works here in the state of Pennsylvania. as the economy grows, our tax revenues grow. As people take more home in their paychecks, they pay more income tax. As people buy more at stores, they pay more sales tax. So as the economy grows, directly available revenues to the state of Pennsylvania grow. By advocating that we need to raise taxes, you are advocating that government needs to grow faster than the people's paychecks grow. In my book, that's unsustainable. Now, why is there this thirst for growth? Why do we hear these comments about a structural deficit? The simple reality is this: as a young accountant at a large steel company, I learned something very quickly, and that was that every dollar that's spent winds up in someone's pocket. And as the speaker pointed out, we have an enormous problem with our pension system. An enormous amount of every new tax dollar that comes into our state goes out into the pension system. But that's not the full story. The real story is this: there is not one person up here that is putting their foot down and saying, we can't spend more at the state level. We are putting our feet down and saying, we want to spend less more. No one is advocating that state employees take a pay cut. But the sheer reality is that the sheer reality is that public sector employee salaries and benefits are the single largest cost driver in our state. And the next reality is this: every single represented worker here in the state of Pennsylvania, whether they're a clerk, whether they're a teacher, will receive a 3.5% to 5% pay increase this year. No one up here is asking that those employees take a pay cut. No one is asking that those employees be laid off. What we are asking is that we need to get those costs under control, or history will repeat itself. The economy will not grow fast enough, and we'll be put in a position to raise taxes, or be put in a position to be asked to raise taxes. You know, as Representative Marr mentioned, the governor talked about visionary. He talked about how passing his tax increase was a once-in-a-generational vote to fix every problem in Pennsylvania. Well, I believe that the people of Pennsylvania are smarter than that. I believe that they have better memories than that. We look back to 1992. In 1992, there was a once-in-a-generation tax increase vote that was going to change the course of Pennsylvania. The income tax was raised. In 2000, there was a once-in-a-generation tax increase, a tax that'll fix all of our problems. And the cigarette tax was increased across the state of Pennsylvania. 3 years later, Governor Rendell, once-in-a-generation tax, the tax increase to end all future tax increases, and the personal income tax was increased. And just 1 year later, there wasn't enough money to spend for those who want to spend it, and the state of Pennsylvania passed slot machines. And that was enough to last through 2009, whenever table games was passed. And now here we are, as elected members of the House. Here we are, the people who elect us in the public, and we're asked to believe by this governor that just one more tax increase, one more time, once in a generation, and it will solve all of Pennsylvania's budgetary problems. I believe that the people of Pennsylvania are smarter than that. I believe that if we continue down that path, we know where it's going to lead us. We're going to be faced with another opportunity to make a once-in-a-generational tax increase vote later down the line that will once again not fix our problems if we don't correct on the cost side. We need to be on a race to the top, not on a race to the bottom. Thank you.
Thank you, Eli. Representative Rick Ciccone.
Thanks, Jason. Thank you. Really good comments by all my colleagues, so I don't want to repeat anything that they said. I just want to maybe share a couple stories from my own district. Look, I was with an individual yesterday, works a very dangerous and physical job. In the last 2 years, he received a 6 cents an hour pay increase. And yet there's people in our area in Western Pennsylvania, they're going to receive a $30,000 longevity pay increase, state employees. And he's going to have to pay for that, and he's raising a family of 5, and he got a 6 cent an hour pay increase. The taxpayers are tapped out. Small businesses are burdened by these things. And on top of the tax increase that the governor wants to put on us, he went ahead and raised the minimum wage for state employees. And he hopes to carry that argument out into the rest of the private sector. he doesn't realize what that also does to small businesses. I heard the DCED secretary say at the appropriation hearings when someone asked him the question of how many jobs would be lost if we raised the minimum wage in Pennsylvania, he said none. And I said, well, I beg to differ with you because I can take you to at least 4 small businesses in my district and about 50 around this state that I know of that will close down or they'll fire employees, they'll lay off employees if you raise the minimum wage. I have a dog grooming business in my district, a young entrepreneur. She has 6 employees. She built that up from a business all by herself. She said, Representative, if he raises the minimum wage, I'm going to have to lay off at least half of my employees, maybe more. We were just at a dry cleaners in Camp Hill the other day, 38 years in business. That business is struggling right now with the down economy. If there's increased taxes or a raise in the minimum wage, he's going to have to lay off employees. And he's been in business a long time. He's never seen anything like this. I tell you, our governor is a spending junkie. And with every injection of your tax dollars, he satiates himself. But I'll tell you, there's some poor taxpayer as a result is laying prostrate in the gutter because of it. We have got to get him on spending rehab. And we've got to cut our spending, not increase taxes, to turn this economy around and save our small businesses. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Representative Jim Christiana.
Good luck, Sam. Good luck. What do you say?
It's not really a laughing matter, though, but following Rick is obviously a difficult challenge. What else is left to be said? Pennsylvania taxpayers in all 67 counties have watched Harrisburg fail to do its job. I think up here, even though we are as passionately opposed to the governor's agenda as we've talked about, I think we all still feel a responsibility to get something done. And I go back to something that the speaker had mentioned. 3 times we tried to fund our state government. We tried to fund our education system at a record amount. 3 times we were met by the governor's opposition. Why? Because he's hell-bent on raising taxes on every business and every working person in Pennsylvania. And when we look at the latest decision by the governor in December, as John Moore mentioned, we were 2% away from a budget. We disagreed about $600 million. And so what's the governor's reaction? To slash the budget by $7 billion. And for what purpose? Just to inflict pain on those that are receiving the $7 billion. To tell us to get back and vote for the governor's increases in taxes. So as much as we're disappointed about not having a completed state budget now into the month of March, it's not going to be used against us to wreck the economy and to wreck your family budget and to wreck the budget of small businesses. But we're going to continue to go back to Harrisburg and be there on Monday. We're going to continue to convince our Democratic colleagues to join this process because they can help this process. We can overcome this governor's punitive decisions if they would agree with us to override his veto and to drive out these funds. But unfortunately, they've been standing on the sidelines this entire process, just reading off the governor's talking points and talking about higher taxes, yet voting against every single tax increase that the governor's put on the table. Let's not forget, the governor's had his chance to convince all of us to vote for his budget proposals, and they've continually failed. And so when we go into next year, we go into the next budget cycle, I don't see much difference coming, I think, until the governor realizes, and he's not going to realize it until the Democrats in the House and the Senate stand up to him and say, Governor, enough is enough, and join with us to pass responsible budgets. Unfortunately, we're going to continue to have gridlock that looks a lot like Washington, D.C. I think many folks are frustrated. We're frustrated that Harrisburg has turned into a carbon copy of Washington under this governor. But that's not going to be used to force us to vote for job-crushing, economic, catastrophic tax increases. And so I'm just thankful that I'm joined with my colleagues in Western Pennsylvania and Central Pennsylvania and Eastern Pennsylvania talking about this, because it is significant public policy with significant consequences, and if we don't get it right, there's going to be damage for decades to come. So thank you. And Jason, thank you for your leadership here today.
All right. Thank you, Jim. Thank you to my colleagues.
Jason, this young man, was a small business owner himself. Jason, you should tell them about your experience in business.
Right.
Because it's an important story.
It's been an interesting journey for me. About 4 years ago, I started Jason's Cheesecake Company. I've been a small business owner ever since. I have several contract workers. It's been a family-run business. I'm fortunate enough my dad is here with me today. I wouldn't be able to do it without his help. But there's a lot of other things that these guys had talked about, particularly with insurance costs, taxes, and that whole structure that really make it difficult for a small business owner to make it work these days, especially when you're starting from zero, from the ground and trying to work yourself up. To go from $0 in sales to $50,000 in sales to $100,000 in sales requires a lot of work, and it's a lot of effort. And to see taxes go up, and for a small business myself that's trying to grow now, to buy more equipment, to hire more people, to pay a family-sustaining wage, it's getting harder. And to do what the governor wants us to do, it's just going to deter more and more people from starting businesses and bringing businesses here and hiring people, which is the opposite effect that we want here. So I'm very happy to have my business. I'm looking forward to growing it. I'm looking forward to fighting back on these tax increases that the governor wants. I appreciate my colleagues being here today from all over part of the western part of the state. Dave, thank you for hosting us today. And Sonny, thank you for being here and speaking. At this point in time, we'll take any questions you guys have. I don't see any.
Yeah, I'll take the question.
Oh.
Just, Dave, how did you end up hosting this here? By the way, my wife's family's from right over here. Used to have great seafood in, so you probably know them.
Oh, yes, the Dave's.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like old down here. But yeah, how did you end up?
I was asked through Jason's office if they told me what they were going to do, and they like to get to small businesses in his district. And I said, "You're more than welcome to use my facility anytime." Hopefully, it's for a good cause.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Obviously, there's a sense of frustration. Do you see any way of compromise or of like general literacy, the Democrats changing their philosophy enough to actually have some movement done?
Yeah.
Is this conversation just going to be going on and on and on?
Well, I think two important points. First of all, with the leaders like Jason who are out here representing their constituents, everybody knows that if you're going to increase these taxes like the governor is calling upon, you're going to hurt the economy, not help it. I will tell you this, if the governor's tax increases would have occurred, Pennsylvania would have been in a far worse situation than where we are right now. Where we are right now is schools and human services, all those payments are being met. But as my colleague John Marr alluded, the crucial line that's out there is the basic education funding line. Now, he did sign all the other lines. Contributions to the pensions, of course, was signed. Social Security payments, transportation, special needs, all those particular lines that go through public education were all signed. So the schools are receiving those dollars. But the governor took a few punitive approaches, really just designed, as Jim Christiana said, to force an increase in taxes that is going to hurt Pennsylvania economy. And this group has held that off. And that's why Pennsylvanians today are still better off than where we would have been if the governor's massive tax increase package would have gone through. I think people have to understand that. While it's not the optimal location, the fact that we did not increase taxes like the governor wanted it is the important story. And important monies are getting out to education and to human services. The other important point is this. The Democratic colleagues, I think many of them, share our perspective, particularly the Democrats from Western Pennsylvania. What they need to do, and I think many of them are beginning to do, as you saw some votes right before the hearings, is to break from the governor. I think our objective is to put a final supplemental, I know it's a technical term, but a supplemental budget to just finish up those lines for 15-16. And my great hope is that many of our Democratic colleagues are going to be with us. Many of them have share perspectives with us, but I think out of party loyalty, they've been hanging with the governor. But I think that's breaking, because I think they see that despite running, what, $2 million in ads against us, which we didn't have, that public sector union money to run those kind of ads. The fact of the matter is the governor's poll numbers continue to go down, and I think our message of trying to grow the economy and to be responsible about spending has resonated. And that's why I think within the next week, I'm hoping we're going to see a supplemental on the governor's desk. That's the objective.